Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, you can definitely hear me. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone's having a good morning so far. It's a good Sunday morning. Started off a little bit rough. I looked at my PowerPoint and I was like, I'm not going to be able to see any of that. So I thank you for your attention. I'm going to turn off these lights actually, or else I'm going to be squinting the whole time. There we go. That's better. So I've been watching a lot of history lately. 250th anniversary. My wife and I had a great opportunity to head to, I was working in Louisiana for a couple of weeks. My wife and I were able to go to New Orleans, and I went to go and check out the World War II Museum. If you ever have an opportunity to go there, I would highly recommend you go there. It was amazing. And ever since then, I've been just watching YouTube videos on World War II and Cold War and so on and so forth. And my mom and I were watching a video just, I think yesterday or the day before yesterday, and she made the comment, which we're pretty sure we've all heard this comment before. I've definitely made the comment before, where, man, you think you have it bad, those individuals had it bad. You know, there was a time in the war where, you know, there was innocent lives from, you know, Britain to Germany to Russia to that, you know, their homes were getting bombed, like innocent lives. They had no idea that they were about to be bombed, and 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, their homes are being blown up. They don't know what was coming to them, right? And even if they didn't get their homes bombed, the apartment or the home next to them were bombed, and they just woke up to just nothing but rubble in the morning. So, you know, that comment was made like, man, they had it rough, right? Well, the individual that I'm going to be talking about this morning, this individual had it rough, Joseph. We're going to talk about Joseph and the coat of many colors this morning. Now, about 3 days ago, I realized that, okay, wait a minute, Andrew's preached this before. Andrew actually preached this just a few Sundays ago, so I have some big shoes to fill. So hopefully I could do somewhat just as good as Andrew did. So no pressure, right? So how could this happen to me? A message from Genesis, the story of Joseph. He was betrayed, he was forgotten, although he was promoted by God. So Joseph. Well, let's look at this slide first, the beginning. So now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors. You can find that in Genesis. Joseph was chosen, favored, and given a dream, but favor is not a shield from hardship. It is often the reason for it. So Joseph, right? So we have this guy, he's roughly, I don't know, maybe like a late teenager, almost 20 years old, and he is favored by his father, right? Which obviously you don't want to favor any of your children, but he was favored. He had other brothers, and Joseph was a bit of a tattletale. He was a bit of a tattletale, and not only that, he went to his brothers one day, and he was like, which his brothers did not like him very much. Just want to let you know, because they were out working the fields, doing hard labor, whereas Joseph was like, he was favored, right? So he was mostly indoors. He didn't really do a whole lot. So they were already jealous of him because of that, and because he was favored by his father. Well, then his father was like, you know what? I'm going to give Joseph a coat of many colors, and the brothers weren't really looked at. They were like, they didn't get a coat of many colors. They didn't get any coat, right? So then all of a sudden, Joseph goes up to his brothers as they were working in the fields, because his father asked him to, and he told them, hey, guess what? You're going to bow down to me one day. I had this dream. Like, how would you feel, right? How would you feel if Joseph, if your older brother or your youngest brother told you that? I would not like that. I don't have any brothers or sisters, but I do have some cousins, and there's some of them, maybe not all of them. If there were some of them that told me that, I'm like, no, that's just not going to happen. I wouldn't say I'm going to throw you in a pit or anything, but I could just in my mind say, you know, that's definitely not going to happen, right? So, So what his brothers did, right? So they saw that he had favor, and they were just consumed by jealousy. They were already consumed by jealousy prior to that fact, right? But then you have your brother coming up to you, and like I said before, you're in the hot sun, you're doing what you can, and then your brother tells you like, hey, I'm gonna rule you one day. At least that's the dream that I had, and I believe that's gonna come true, right? So then they knew that he had favor, and they were consumed by jealousy. So then they stripped his coat and threw him into a pit. So that coat that he had, that amazing coat that he had of many colors, they were like, okay, you're not gonna tell us this, and here we are working, and you're just coming from maybe not an air-conditioned, building, but you're coming from an area where it's a lot less hot, you have shade, and you're not doing anything. So we're gonna rip this from you. So just imagine his brothers just ripping that coat from him. I don't know if you've ever seen any of those videos where individuals, they have like a shirt on or they have like pants on or something, and they just rip it off, right? It's not anything like that. This is a woven piece of material that's being ripped off of him very, very violently, right? And why? Well, because they were jealous and because they were mad at him, and they were furious at this point, right? So then they sold him to the Ishmaelite traders for 20 pieces of silver. So think about that. 20 pieces of silver. Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong, right? We have a lot of historians in the crowd, right? So if I'm wrong, please correct me after the sermon. So the Ishmaelites came down, right? And his brothers saw the Ishmaelites. Joseph was already in the pit. And they were like, one of the brothers, I forget who, one of the brothers was like, okay, well, I mean, he is our brother, so are we going to want to kill Joseph? Let's make some money off of him. Let's make a profit off of him, right? Smart brother, right? Well, maybe not so much in the very end of the story, but he wanted to make money off of his brother, right? So this isn't just simple as, okay, 20 pieces of silver, here's our brother. Let's dig a little bit deeper into it. So he was being sold as a slave. Being a slave is definitely something you don't want to be, right? So your brother sold you into slavery. So it's one thing to be born of a slave because you're born of a slave and you are a slave, and that's all you know. You know hard labor, you know mistreatment, so on and so forth. Your whole family is a slave, right? All your friends are slaves, right? Think about Joseph and where he came from. This is a guy that was not really doing any hard labor, chilling at home, not doing anything, favored by his dad, probably given whenever it's dinner time or whatever the case is, he's probably the first one to get served before his brothers who have been working all day, to get sold into slavery in a land that he wasn't expecting to go to. Imagine that. Totally two different worlds. So I haven't been out of the country a whole lot, but I know some of you have. But I have gone to Mexico a long time ago with one of my uncles, and I could see there was some areas you could tell like, wow, like there's not a whole lot going on over here. And then you go to some areas where he took me where there's definitely not a lot going over here, right? Church building just with cinder blocks, no roof. You have to go to a outhouse where the door doesn't close all the way, so it's kind of tricky. You can only imagine how that all pans out, right? Some individuals worshiping under a tree. Some individuals, just not a very good, living environment. But that's not a very good living environment to me. Now, unfortunately, I don't speak Spanish, right? So I'd be going into Mexico not knowing a whole lot, right? But for him, we all know he's going to Egypt. For him to go into slavery, going to an area where he doesn't speak the language, he doesn't know anybody, that has to be scary. So it's not just, I wanted to just dig a little bit deeper into that and not only just tell you, okay, he's been sold for 20 pieces of silver. There's a lot more than that, right? So, but his brothers know that. His brothers know exactly what they're doing, knowing that what he does and what kind of environment he's from, coming from, a somewhat wealthy family, right? Sold into slavery. That has to be scary. Oops. Okay, so Joseph went from beloved son to slave through the hands of his own family. I don't know about you. I don't know what your situation is like. I don't know what your family situation is like. And I'm sure that maybe you've had some close friends. Maybe you've even had some sisters, some brothers, some family members who just, for lack of a better term right now, did you wrong, right? They just slap in the face. Imagine this. I mean, it does get worse than this, but that's pretty bad, to sell you into slavery. Your own brother to sell you into slavery. Right? So I kind of was. Now, of course, that's exactly how Joseph looked like, right? And his brothers, because that's what AI says, right? So, no, but I just wanted to paint a bit of a picture. You know, they like almost see this opportunity, right? And meanwhile, imagine how Joseph is feeling at this particular time, right? So then at that time, you know, after that, you know, what do the brothers do? Well, then they soak his coat of many colors, I believe, into some kind of, I think it was goat blood, if I'm not mistaken. But anyways, they do that, and they tell their father he's been killed by a ravish animal. Father weeps, right? So not only did they hate his brother because they were jealous of his brother, but they also were about to kill their brother, sold him into slavery, and then they lied. I'm like, my goodness, like you just keep on doing one thing after another, right? So that just definitely shows the hatred they have for their own brother. So then he gets sold to Pharaoh's house. The Lord was with Joseph, and he was a successful man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. It's in Genesis 39, verse 2. So he was a slave, but he served like a son. God's presence doesn't always change your circumstances. Sometimes it just shows up in them, right? So you're going to see Jeremy's lesson this morning was awesome, but it's a testament of faith and Joseph's faith throughout this whole entire process. And just think about that. Think about his faith. Think about what he had to go through, right? So then he goes to Potiphar's house. He gets sold to him. You know, Potiphar is, you know, he's kind of up there in the ranks as far as military goes. So he has a bunch of slaves, right? So then Potiphar notices, like, wait a minute, like there's something about this. Like, I have slaves, I've had slaves, but there's something about Joseph. It's almost as if like everything he does, everything he touches, every assignment he's given, you know, if he tells somebody to do something, like it just goes right. So I don't know. I'm not saying I would ever have slaves, but if I'm in Pharaoh's position, I'm like, you know what? There's something about this guy. There's something about this kid. Like, I need to make him second over my house, over my household. He's not going to be over me, obviously, but everyone's going to be listening to him. So you see how like God's working. You know how we say that God works in mysterious ways? There's something different about this individual, and that's God. You know, a bunch of my aunts, they always tell me, you know, the first thing, which I forget, which is not right, but I forget. A lot of times when I'm being blessed in my life and something happens that's good to me, to my family, you know, whatever the circumstances is, I tend to stop and I tend to think, thank you, God. Thank you for doing that for me. Thank you for blessing me at this time. We don't always think about that. That's a bit selfish, right? You know, you have all these blessings, and sometimes you take a look at your life, you take a look at what Joseph's going through, you take a look at what some of the individuals in Africa are going through, or in the Philippines that we've talked about. I know that Joanne and, my goodness, Ashley have mentioned us before, right? No matter what your financial circumstances are now, like, or what your situation is now, there's somebody always going through something a lot worse. So I'm telling you this, but I'm also kind of telling myself this too, because I don't always think about that. I don't always think about how blessed I am and how my life can be totally different right now if it wasn't for the circumstances that I was in. So just think about that, and think about Joseph. So he was a slave. He went and served like a son. God's presence doesn't always change your circumstances, and sometimes it just shows up in them, right? So you're kind of in the trenches, right? And you're like, okay, why did God put me here? We talked about that a little bit in the lesson this morning, but okay, it's kind of hard to have faith in God when I'm like, okay, my brothers almost killed me. I was sold as a slave. I walked all the way to Egypt. I don't know the language. I'm in a foreign area. I'm in a foreign place. I mean, it's kind of hard to have faith in God then, right? Like, in all honesty, we could sit here and we could say, I would be like Joseph, and I would have faith, and I would persevere, and I would, whatever the case may be. But literally put yourself in that situation. Would you have that same mindset? I would love to tell you right now that I would, but I don't know. That would be very, very difficult. That's just going to cause me to dig a little bit deeper into my heart, into my faithfulness. Like, you know what? Maybe I got a little ways to go, right? I mean, luckily, what are the chances of you being in that situation? Although there is slavery that does exist in the world, but what are the chances of you being in that situation? But still, that could be very, very difficult. So, then we have the false accusation, right, of Joseph. I think some of you knowing the story, or if not all of you knowing the story, you kind of know where I'm going at with this. But then we look at, okay, so he's in Potiphar's house. He's doing very, very good. So then Potiphar's wife is like, you know what? I don't know. Like, he's doing really good. Like, she's probably thinking, I'm kind of attracted to him now because, the decisions that he's making, the choices that he's making, the way that he talks, the way that he directs, obviously she finds that attractive, right? So then she wanted to trap him. So what did she do? Almost every single day for a certain amount of days, that attraction got a little bit closer, a little bit stronger, and she was like, you know what? Come and lie with me. My husband's never going to know. And you have to understand, as an Egyptian, as someone of seniority, especially as Potiphar and his wife, they're not really, a lot of people really don't tell them no. So that's almost like taboo to Potiphar's wife. Like, wait a minute, you're telling me no? I have all this gold, I have all this riches. I'm kind of somewhat your boss. I'm the wife of your boss. Like, but you're telling me no? No. And then she tries and she tries and she tries to trap him, which she did, right? To destroy his integrity. That's one thing that we ask when I used to have employees under me, when I would have to interview a lot. That's one thing I would talk about is integrity. That's one thing that one of my mentors always taught me. Like, she taught me, do you know what integrity means, and so on and so forth. And if you don't know what integrity means you're doing the right thing even when no one's looking. But who's always watching? God's always watching. So it's that integrity factor, which isn't always easy. In this day and age, in the things that we do, the things that we act upon, it isn't always easy to have that good integrity, right? But she was testing his integrity. She wanted to silence him with shame, and she wanted to end his story, right? Because we have the story of Joseph, right? Again, with the brothers and the pit and the being sold to slavery, right? So it's a story. She's trying to end that story. And what's the end result, right? So he's a slave. No matter what, like, she has to think that if she's going to get him in trouble, which she does, there's no way Joseph's going to live. Like, he's going to die as a slave, and she is accusing him of rape. There's no way. So in my mind, it's like, what do you do, right? That's when faith sets in. That's when you're like, you have to dig super, super deep. You're being accused of all that. Dig super, super deep and be like, you know what? God's with me. And God was with him. God is with all of us all the time. I don't even think I comprehend that sometimes. I don't think I ever stop and think like someone's watching me right now, right? God is there with you. So what did God allow, right? Because you have to understand that, again, I know I kind of said it earlier, but you have to understand, in Joseph's mindset, it's almost like, why was God allowing this to happen to me? Like, I'm trying to do what's best. I'm trying to do what's right. But I'm about to go to prison because of these false accusations. And what did Joseph do one of the times whenever Potiphar's wife was trying to get him to lay with her? He ran. He ran the opposite way. So in her mindset, okay, it's not just like you saying no anymore. You're legitimately running. I'm sure that upset her. Because, like, how dare you, right? So what did God allow? A deeper test of character. That's sometimes the life that we live, the trials and tribulations that we go through. Sometimes you got to think about it as a test. And how many times do you think I think of it as a test? Almost none. I get in my head sometimes. You know, I'm saying that because I'm hoping I'm not just the only one. I'm just not just confessing something that's just totally just taboo to everybody. But that happens all the time with me. I have to stop and think, like, wait a minute, Urban, like, this is a bit of a test. Like, God's putting me through this, but it's all how I handle it. I'm telling you, as an imperfect Christian, over half the time I fail. Over half the time I fail. And if you fail, that's fine. That's fine. You have another sermon that I preached. You have time, right? Now don't just sit back and relax and let the years just go by, right? But you do have time. Okay, so a deeper test of character, a path to unlikely position. Okay, so like, what's going to happen? You know, I'm sure Joseph's not dumb, right? I'm sure he's thinking like, okay, you know, what do I do here? Some of us may be thinking, okay, well, maybe if I do lie with her, maybe I'll just do that and then just confess a little bit later on. You think Joseph is thinking like that? No. He has the ultimate faith in God to the point that he just ran the opposite way and totally denied Potiphar's wife. Proof that faithfulness survives an injustice. So we're gonna see that a little bit later on. Have you ever just done, I don't know, let's just say at work, right? I've been in this situation plenty of times, and with family and so on and so forth, where you're just like, you know, that person at work, he or she just continues to like advance and move up and just all this other stuff. And that's a bad person. That person's rude. That person doesn't talk to people right. That person has treated me wrongfully. Why does that individual keep on advancing? Isn't that, you think that how Joseph maybe felt just an inkling? I mean, he's human, right? He's not perfect. You just think about that, right? So he's probably thinking like, man, I'm doing all of this good stuff, but it's like, okay, Potiphar's wife is still going to be Potiphar's wife. She's getting away with this. A step up of something only God could do. Okay, so still serving in the dungeon. Okay, so Joseph was thrown in prison, right? So he was obviously, you know, I don't know. I guess he was thrown in prison, but I'm really, really surprised he wasn't just killed right there and then. Again, as a slave to a high-ranking officer's wife is saying that you threatened to rape her, I'm really, really surprised he just wasn't stoned or he just wasn't killed right then and there. But I'm kind of thinking, I mean, obviously God is on his side, but I'm kind of thinking Potiphar was like, you know what? He was just so maybe just hurt because he had this individual that was so close to him that he just put him in prison, right? And then he was in prison. I'm not saying that Middle Eastern prison was so much better than death, right? Because it wasn't. Here's a picture that I wanted to show. So I don't think this is exact. There was an image that Doug had up one time of a prison, and I tried to look for it, and it was last minute, and I couldn't find it. But I'm not saying this exactly what a prison looked like, but here's a bit of a snippet, if you will, on what a prison may have looked like, right? And I think honestly, I could be wrong. I think honestly, this may have been one of the better prisons, because I was doing some research on like Middle Eastern dungeons, and like kind of way back in the day, where a lot of these dungeons were really, really small and really, really short, right? And then you had this one light just coming through, right? So if it's a cloudy day or if it's a rainy day, you're obviously not gonna get any light, right? And then they feed you only a little bit to survive, right? Only feed you and give you enough water to survive, because death is way too easy, right? And then on top of that, you're shackled, right? Because in the Bible it says he was shackled. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of like, what kind of hope do you have? I mean, I wouldn't want to go to America's air-conditioned, somewhat overcrowded prison. I definitely don't want to go to that dungeon, right? But despite all of that, another example is Paul, right? Because Paul was in prison as well. But despite all of that, he still has faith. In my mind, I'm like, I don't know, what do the kids say? What do the kids say nowadays? Bruh, like that is just like a lot. I know Aiden's shaking his head. All the high school class students hate when I say that, but I'm sure Alex would be shaking her head right now if she was here. But can you imagine? Like, that's horrible. You're doing everything you can in God's sight, everything you can to persevere, to have faithfulness, you know, and also have the other mindset like, okay, I am a slave, but then I've just kind of moved up a little bit, right? And then I kind of get some I don't know, perks, if you will, as kind of like the top slave, right? And then boom, just like that, you're thrown in a dungeon. That's horrible. So, okay, so I kind of wanted to paint that picture a little bit. So then the king's head butler, right? The king's head butler and the head baker were placed in his. I'm not sure why they were put into prison. It may say in the Bible. I'm not 100% sure. I didn't research that. But nonetheless, they were put into prison, right? So they were put into prison, the same exact environment as Joseph. So they both had these troubled dreams, right? So then they were, you know, having a conversation with Joseph, and Joseph, he can interpret dreams, right? So then they asked Joseph, like, hey, can you interpret our dream? Okay, I don't know. This is just me, right? If I'm asking Joseph to interpret a dream for me, and if I had somebody ask me to interpret a dream for them, and if I'm Joseph, I've just been falsely accused of rape, I'm in this prison that's only feeding me enough to survive. In my mind, I'm like, go to somebody else, you know? I don't want to have anything to do with interpreting that dream. I don't want to have anything to do with, I mean, how would you do that? I mean, realistically, right? Like, we could sit here and say whatever, but realistically, imagine. That takes a lot of faith. Just that little thing, that question of interpreting a dream, which he could easily do, and he did. I mean, that takes a lot of effort and a lot of faithfulness. I mean, we say rock bottom, and I don't even think rock bottom even is the right term. This is even worse than rock bottom, right? Okay, but he interprets the dreams. He says, okay, cool, I'll interpret your dreams. I think the baker, I think he was beheaded. I forgot what the dream was that he interpreted, but basically the baker's dream was true. It came true because he was beheaded and he was killed. And then the butler's dream was came true. He ended up getting out of prison. He ended up actually going back into doing his duties. He took time to minister them, even from his own place of pain, right? We talked about that. So yet the chief butler did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. Joseph asked one thing, remember me. Okay, so you're about to get out. I don't know about this baker guy, right? He's going to be in a situation where he's obviously not going to live. But you're going to get out of here, and you're going to go back to kind of what you were doing. Like, remember me. I'm in this horrible situation. Please remember me. Yet, the chief butler did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. You ever been in that situation before where you're like, hey man, like, I'm trying to get this job, remember me, like, whenever you're hiring, right? And they forget half the time, more than half the time, they always forget. But in this situation, being falsely accused in a dungeon, dark, cold, probably don't get enough oxygen in there. And he forgot. Like, dude, I just interpreted your dream for you. Like, you asked me a favor. The least you could do is just put in a good word or try to get me out of prison. But he forgot. Joseph asked one thing, remember me when you were restored? The butler walked free. I mean, man, I've seen some documentaries before with prisons and jails and so on and so forth. And everyone is like, man, I wish I was that guy getting out, right? But then they get to walk back to their cell and their TV and, so on and so forth. I'm just trying to get you to wrap your head around the situation that he was in that dark, cold, less oxygen, right, prison. Remember me when you were restored. The butler walked free, and Joseph waited 2 more years in silence. 2 more years in silence. Are you kidding me? You not only forgot about me, but you forgot about me, and I'm stuck in this hole for 2 more years? Like, how do you even comprehend still being faithful to God? I mean, it's just like one thing after another, right? One thing after another. He said spending 2 more years in prison. Forgotten by man. So 2 more years in prison, right? He's forgotten by man. But who hasn't forgot him? God. That is a hard pill to swallow. You're saying that God didn't forget about me? Do you not see the situation that I'm in? And you're telling me that God didn't forget about me? No, he didn't. He didn't forget about him. So why did Joseph never break? So he feared God above all. Do we fear God? I mean, okay, you know God, you fear him, but do you fear him? Do you, Joseph, coat him many colors, fear him? Do you, Paul, fear him, right? So he feared God more than he feared his circumstances. No pit, no prison, no power on earth changed that foundation for him. He refused to sin against God, right? When tempted, he answered in clear, how can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? Like, how do you expect me to do this, but you want me to sin against our Creator? No way. There's no way. And he did that. Integrity was not negotiable. Identity rooted in God. You ever see someone that's like, you ever see someone, I don't know, maybe one of your friend group or somebody at work or school or whatever the case may be, and you look at them and be like, that person's different. There's something different about that person. He's not wanting to go with us to the bar, or he's not wanting to go with us to this place or that place. Something different about that person. Is that person rooted in God? Because Joseph was. His identity was anchored in God. We talked about anchor in Jeremy's class. You have that anchor as God. His identity was anchored in God, not in position, his title, or his comfort. When everything else was stripped away, he still knew who he was. Man, that is difficult. Everything that happened to him, and he still did not forget who he was and did not forget who his Creator was. But how often, guilty, right now I'm telling you I'm guilty, how often does something not even close to what Joseph went through happens in our lives, and God is just totally forgotten? That's rough. Am I stepping on your toes? Because I think I've stepped on my toes at least 10 times, right? I mean, it's a truth. Obedience was devotion, right? So you have obedient, but devotion to me is just a strong, I'm devoted. I am all in, right? He was all in for God. His faithfulness was never performance for an audience, It was love for God, consistent in the pit, in the palace, and in the prison between them. He knew that if he had enough faith, that he would persevere. Okay, so not so much a timeline, but kind of something I wanted to go over. So when God was ready to move, right? So the dream, Pharaoh dreamed a dream no one in Egypt could interpret. But then the chief butler was like, hey, I know this guy, been through a lot, but he can interpret dreams. Now he remembered. So whenever I said that he totally forgot, yes, the chief butler did forget. But then God works in mysterious ways, right? It just so happens that Pharaoh had this dream. He wanted someone to interpret this dream. Chief butler was like, I know this dude named Joseph. He's in a rough situation right now, but this guy can interpret dreams. So then Joseph, being Joseph, was like, sure, I'll interpret your dream, right? He could have been like, I don't want to do it. I mean, it's Pharaoh, so I guess you can't really say no, right? But he was in a state of mind where he definitely could have. Joseph was brought out of prison, cleaned up, and stood before Pharaoh himself. So it's like, this dude's been in prison for a very long time, and then all of a sudden, almost as if in like a snap of a finger, he's getting all cleaned up and dressed up, and he's standing in front of Pharaoh. He's not standing in front of Potiphar, like, you know, a high-ranking officer in the military. This is like the man, like Pharaoh. People worship this man and bow down to him and think of him as a god. He was just in prison a few minutes, a few hours, whatever ago, right? So then he interprets this dream. You know, the dream is basically like he foretells that it's going to be 7 years of, you know, wealth, fatted calves, so on and so forth, and then it's going to be 7 years of famine. If I got that mixed up, I apologize. But regardless of the fact, he interpreted that dream, and the dream was true. But what did he do? Like I said before, you know how like something good happens in our lives, and we're like, okay, it's awesome for me, I appreciate it, but then we don't give God the credit. Despite everything Joseph went through, who did he give credit to? God. I just find the story like so amazing because it's like, man, out of all of that, you didn't give yourself any credit. You don't want to make yourself look good. No, all the credit is to God. God is the reason why I was able to interpret these dreams. God is the reason why I was able to persevere despite me being thrown in a pit, sold to slavery in a foreign country. I don't even know who the people are, what the language is, and being in prison. That's intense. You give all the credit to God. That's a testament of his faith. So then he was at age 30. He was appointed over all the land of Egypt. You know, basically Pharaoh was like, dude, everything. Like, everything comes through you. You're not over me, of course, kind of like Potiphar did. But you're going to be over everything, but not over me, right? So roughly 13 years of suffering, right, and being imprisoned. He was second only to Pharaoh, ruler over all of Egypt. No man, one remembered, became the man like no one ignored. So I kind of added this in there. So I always talk about like networking and so on and so forth in resumes. So no networking, right? He wasn't like, you know, going to this like networking prisoner luncheon and like, hey, like I could do all this stuff, right? Right? No resume, right? No connections. I mean, other than maybe so happen to know the chief butler in prison and so on and so forth. But nonetheless, no connections, just faithfulness and what? A coincidence? No. God's perfect timing, right? So then, do not therefore be grieved or angry. So then he sees his brothers. Can you imagine? It's like, okay, these guys are my brothers and they sold me into slavery. And here I am wearing this nice, whatever they wore. Look at the picture, right? Right? And he sees his brothers. I don't know about y'all, but in my mind, I'm like, I got y'all. Like, y'all are going down. Like, you should have killed me, right? Right? And look at me now, right? And so, but this is, I mean, if you haven't been listening at all, okay, it is what it is. But despite, he has been in turmoil. And think about it, his brothers sold him and caused him to go through pretty much all that turmoil. because of jealousy, right? Check this out. Do not therefore be grieved or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. It was not you who sent me here, but God. Whoa. Mind-boggling. I don't even know what that means, and I just heard somebody say it one time, but mind-boggling, right? I mean, I don't know. Can be a bit emotional, right? Because like he's in this situation because they sold him. And when I heard first the story, I was like, man, those brothers are horrible. Like I would never forgive them. You didn't put me here. God put me here. Just whoa. So he stood in the most powerful position in the world and used it to comfort the men who destroyed his childhood. The last thing I'm thinking about doing if someone did me wrong is comfort them, right? But Joseph did to his own brothers. This is not human strength. This is the fear of God made visible. This is faithfulness made visible. This is, oh, he definitely has his works, right? Faith without works is dead. This is him working. This is God working through him. I promise you we're almost done. Okay, so grace before the ass. Did not go angry. Do not be angry with yourselves. He released them from guilt before they could even ask for forgiveness. God set me before you to preserve life. He saw God's hand behind his brother's sin. The wound had an author they didn't know about. God set me to preserve prosperity and save your lives. His suffering had a scope far bigger than his personal pain. The pit was planting something, right? He was in the pit. He was in the pit the whole time, right? If that makes sense. It was not you who sent me here, but God. He surrendered the narrative completely. He didn't just forgive them. He gave God the pen. I read that somewhere and I was like, I got to put that in there. So I don't take any credit to that. But that was, he gave God the pen. All right. So how does this shape us today? We should not let pain become our identity. Woe is me, right? Again, guilty. Joseph refused to let betrayal define him as he should, right? We see God's hand even when we don't see his reasons, even when the why is still hidden. There's just some times when I'm like, if something, it's not good. If something just doesn't make sense to me, or if I'm like, okay, why did this happen? I can't get past it sometimes. Sometimes I don't let God work through me. I don't let that faith work through me. And I'm like, I need to know the why. I don't always have to know the why. Because most of the time the why is hidden, and I'm probably never going to know the why. We surrender the narrative to God. Joseph said, it was not you, but God. How does this shape us today? Last thing, freedom comes when we give God the pen, right? When we give God the pen. Joseph didn't just forgive. He let God rewrite the whole story because of the trust and the faith that he had in him. I'm going to say something that actually John said yesterday. You know, the Bible isn't just this book of fairy tales. I think you mentioned like my favorite character, like from Harry Potter is Harry Potter or whatever the case. My favorite character is Joseph. They're not characters. These are actual people who lived through this. I'm not just telling you a story of some fairy tale, right? I'm not telling you that. Like this actually happened. He actually went through this. He actually suffered. Jesus actually was crucified, right? Like these aren't just fairy tales and just stories. This actually happened. Last thing, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. How often do we go through trials and tribulations? How often do we see evil within our immediate lives, and we just don't see, okay, maybe something good is going to come out of this? Being a little bit more optimistic, but having more faith. The pit was not the end. The prison was not the end. The forgetting was not the end. God was writing the whole time. Allow God to continue writing. Don't stop him from writing, as we often do, as I often do, unfortunately. But we can do better, right? So if for whatever reason if you're not baptized at all, and you've been studying with your significant other, you've been studying with a member here, whatever the case is, and you feel like, you know what, God is instilled in me, and I want to be his child, and I want to do this forever, and I want to be faithful and do what I can to be a part of his kingdom. I want to meet him someday. I want to meet Joseph someday. I want to meet Peter. I want to meet Paul, right? I want to meet, Saul, whomever, right? And maybe you're ready to be baptized. Cool. Hey, the water's warm. I think hopefully the water heater's working. We got plenty of people that are here that'll help you. But if you have done all that, right, been baptized in the warm water, whatever the case is, and you're struggling, that's okay too, because we have plenty of people here that, you go to some places and you're like, okay, that person doesn't really love me. Like, they just say that. Like, no, like the people here actually do. They actually care about you. So if you're struggling for whatever reason, and you want to come up, whatever your need is, please come up as we stand and sing the song of invitation. Thank you.
Would you live for Jesus and be always pure and good? Would you walk with him within the narrow road? Would you down there on the road? Let God his way with thee. His heart can make you what you want to be. His blood can cleanse your heart and make you free. His love can fill your soul, and you will see 'twas best for him to have his way with thee. Would you have him make you free, follow at his call? Would you know the peace that comes by giving all? Would you have him save you so that you need never fall? Let him have his way with thee. His heart can make you what you want to be. His blood can cleanse your heart and make you free. His love can fill your soul, and you will see 'twas best for him to have his way with thee. Would you in his kingdom find a place of constant rest? Would you prove him true each providential test? Would you in his service labor always at your best? Let him have his way with thee. His heart can make you what you want to be. His blood can cleanse your heart and make you free. His love can fill your soul, and you will see 'twas best for him to have his way with thee.
Well, thank you so much, Urban. We are blessed to have Urban with us and fill in for us. Andrew and his family are out of town, and we so appreciate you filling in for him today, Urban. You did a great job, and you're very comfortable in the pulpit, and I envy that about you. I have to look at my notes. You don't even need a note, so thank you. We welcome all of our visitors. Thank you all that are visiting with us today. We welcome you and hope that you have opportunity to come back and worship with us again. And if you have any questions about what was said or done here today, we would invite you to let us know and set a Bible study up and learn more if you have an interest. Several announcements we want to make you aware of before we are closed in prayer this morning. Let's continue to remember Sherry Berryhill. She has had some problems with her back and with some blood pressure. Let's remember her, and also Marina Spargo. She continues to struggle, and thank you for those who have signed up for the meal list to assist with her. Let's continue to remember Mary Copeland and Derek Finley battling through their kidney issues. And let's remember Mary Canales and Delona Blaylock. They would like to be here, and they just can't. But let's remember them, be praying for them, and mindful of them as they're struggling with the challenges of old age. And mark your calendars as well. We are having a meeting coming up with Tommy Hamilton, and that is Sarah Raymer's dad. He will be here September 20th through the 23rd. That's going to be a Sunday through a Wednesday. And we will have a Sunday evening service with that meeting at 5 o'clock, and the weekdays will be at 7 o'clock. So let's be ready for that and mindful of that upcoming. Our verse this month is Psalm chapter 66, verse 20. Blessed be God, because he has not rejected my prayer or removed his steadfast love from me. So good to see you all today. We wish you a blessed week. Let's help one another get to heaven. And at this time, we'll ask Brother William to come forward and lead us in prayer.
Dear Father, we thank you again for this day that we could come and worship you. We pray for safe travels. We pray for your guidance all week long. Guide, guard, and direct us as we go from this place. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.